Welcome to it. 0 to 60 on a Monday morning here in the Mile High City, January 29th. I am Matt McChesney, your host as always. We got a great show today. The national reporter for the National Football League for the NFL Network, Mr. Cameron Wolfe, will be joining us to talk all things NFL from Championship Sunday. I can't wait to have Cam Wolfe on. He's one of the best in the business. You see him every single Sunday on the NFL Network. He'll be joining us here shortly when he clicks on. Just waiting for him. But as always, the show is brought to you by our good friends at Bet Online. So make sure that you check them out. Go to Bet Online, use the promo code BLEAV, that's BLEAV, and you'll get 50% off your first deposit, or 50% bonus on your first deposit. So they'll give you 50% of what you deposit first off the bat. It's the best place for all your wagering news, the best and most competitive lines. They do a great job of keeping the better informed and keeping everybody on track. Remember, don't bet anything you can't afford to lose. But at the same time, if you're looking to have a good time, Bet Online is the place to go and do it. So look, we've got a great show for you here. I'm waiting for Cam to get going here. He'll be joining us as soon as he logs on. When you get in the lobby. All right, so look, great weekend of the NFL. I mean, the games were outstanding. I really thought it was just an overall great and entertaining weekend. Unfortunately, it's only one day. You only get one championship Sunday. The game's kicked ass, though. I mean, I feel for Detroit. Man, up 24-7 with a chance to go to the Super Bowl, and you end up losing that game. That's heartbreaking the way they did it. We'll talk about Dan Campbell and his decisions, some of the things that he did to lead to that. He kind of got Kyle Shanahan, and Shanahan kind of got, a little bit of redemption. As of 2 weeks ago, Shanahan was 0-30 when trailing by 3 points or more in the fourth quarter. And now, in the last two circumstances, he's had to deal with that, the divisional round against Green Bay, and then, the NFC title game against Detroit. They do great comebacks, and Purdy pulls rabbit out of the hat, and they're rolling in San Francisco. So, Kansas City going to Baltimore, that was just Patrick Mahomes' greatness. Let's be real. Patrick Mahomes is great. 15 is on another level. I talked about this on Coach JB's show at length this morning, but that young man is something like I've never seen in my life. He's just different. And, Cam's going to be joining us here shortly, and we'll talk to him about, Patrick Mahomes and his greatness and everything he brings to the table. And then where did Lamar Jackson go? I understand he's the MVP of the league, but at the same time, he's not the best player in the league. The best player in the league wears 15 for Kansas City. So Lamar might be the consensus MVP. I doubt it's consensus, but he'll be the MVP. But Mahomes is still the best player. And that was on sight for the world to see on Sunday when Kansas City went to Baltimore and got a dub. So make sure, if you're out there, subscribe and like. Make sure you hit that like button if you're watching. And we'll get rolling here as Cameron joins us from the national reporter for the NFL Network. Mr. Cameron Wolfe's going to be joining us here shortly. Moving into Super Bowl here, the Super Bowl 58 in Vegas. You got a rematch of Kansas City and San Francisco from 54, I think. When Garoppolo and San Francisco had the lead late and blew it. Or you can look at it the other way, that Kansas City came back and won the game. Andre Duke, what's up, bro? How are you? Welcome to the show this morning. Thanks for commenting in. I like the rematch. I mean, I would have rather Detroit hung on, but at the same time, the better team won. San Francisco is absolutely loaded to the gills. I mean, their roster is unbelievable, but I don't know if I can pick them against the Chiefs and then actually be able to look at myself in the mirror, because the Chiefs have 15, and 15 is the great equalizer, man. I mean, I've never seen anybody like him before. I've never seen anyone who that sack he took where he got contorted by both legs and kind of, got bent up like a pretzel and still came out of it somehow and like almost put his hand on the ground, took off and threw the ball. That's some Gumby shit. So sometimes you just have to understand that you're watching greatness and appreciate it. And, you're not always going to be in a position where there's true greatness on the field. Sometimes, bad teams win and sometimes great players get knocked out. And the thing about Mahomes is he didn't have to go through growing pains to get to the level he's at. Most great ones have to go through shit. Tom Brady didn't really have to go through a whole lot. He just started winning. Whereas Elway had to go through 14 years of losing. Whereas, Montana came in, started winning. But Steve Young had to go through a ton of rigors to get his ring. Aikman came in, started winning, but, there's a lot of other guys that came in and really struggled to even get to the game, let alone win it. Peyton Manning. Peyton's first ring was a trek, I think 9-10 years in, maybe later. So, there's a lot of rigors in this game, and it takes a lot out of you trying to get to the level where, number one, you have a team around you that can support and help you win football games and help you win titles. But at the same time, the quarterback is what it comes down to in the long run. That's the guy that's either going to make you or break you 99% of the time. So, let's see. We got a couple questions. Is Kyle, here we go. Is Kyle on the hot seat if he loses yesterday? Yeah, probably. I mean, you have to think that even though the relationship with him and Lynch is so strong, I would have to believe that he is on the hot seat if they lose yesterday, but they didn't. They got a much needed victory. That's 2 back-to-back vicks. When they're trailing. So I wouldn't try and live by that if I'm San Francisco, because if you go out and you start slow against Kansas City, you're going to get dealt with. So let's be real. I mean, Kansas City won't have any remorse in hanging 50 on you, especially with the rematch aspect of this. And the first Super Bowl, remember, San Francisco was up with 6 minutes to go in the game. And they essentially, handed the game to Kansas City as Kansas City started making plays. San Francisco kind of wilted and went away. So, I'm interested in that part of the rematch is the Andy Reid Shanahan part of the rematch. The different quarterback against Mahomes. Can Purdy, can Mr. Irrelevant beat the best quarterback in this generation? And some saying, maybe we'll do a top 5, top 10 quarterback list here at the end as we get through the week. I'm sure that everybody that's in the comment section would love that shit because lists are awesome. It's always fun to do, in the football world. So we've got 2 weeks before the Super Bowl. Maybe we will do a little bit of a top 10 quarterback list. We'll put that out later in the week. Where does Mahomes land on that list? I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of guys out there that are really special, from Roger Staubach to Peyton Manning and Brady and Elway and Marino and, God, man, the list goes on and on and on and on. So where does Mahomes fit in that list? I don't know right now, but I'll tell you this, he goes and gets a ring with this shitty team that he played on this year, which is not very good. I mean, his receiving core is extremely average, but he does elevate all of them. He's got a little bit, of that Tom Brady in him where he can take David Patton and, a bunch of guys who are probably number 2 receivers and turn them into number 1s. Gaffney, guys like that. Of course, he had Welker and Randy Moss as he got older in his career, but for a couple of those Super Bowls, they had some pretty average receivers. So right now, we're going to bring on the national reporter for the NFL Network and my guy Cameron Wolfe to talk all things NFL. There he is. My man, Cameron Wolfe, in the house on 0 to 60 here on the Blue Network. See, how the hell are you, brother? Happy Monday.
Happy Monday, Matt. How you feeling, bro?
Good for you, man.
Not much,
how
man.
You doing down there?
I'm good. It is We actually got a cool day here in South Florida, 60 degrees. I know that's
Yes,
weird, weird for the rest of the world, but this is a cool day here in South Florida. So I'm
very,
good, man.
very fitting. You're on 0 to 60, and it's a nice 60 degrees outside there, and it's
On
a
brand.
nice 45 degrees here, so you're not missing anything. I know you know that Colorado mountain cold. Now look, you're the national reporter for the NFL Network. You're all over the place. You obviously cover the entirety of the sport, although you are based out of Miami. All right, so right off the bat, let's start with the early game.
Yeah.
I know that Lamar Jackson's the MVP, but the best player in the National Football League is Patrick Mahomes. Thoughts?
Yeah, I think that Patrick Mahomes is becoming inevitable, right? Like all playoffs, they've been waiting for someone to take him down. The Bills were the favorites. They're supposed to take him down. They're finally at home. They got their number. Mahomes gets them in the end. This time it's the Ravens. They got the MVP, this elite defense. This is their best chance yet. In the end, the Chiefs, no matter what you say about their receivers, how good they are as an offense, they have Mahomes, and not only Mahomes as a player, but the fear of Mahomes. I think it changes teams' game plan knowing that you have that guy on the other side of the field. Like, for example, the Ravens. The Ravens had been this run-heavy, physical offense all season. They ran the ball 11 times yesterday. They got out of their formula of who they are. And I'd imagine if you had some truth serum to their offensive coordinator, it's because he knew Mahomes was on the other side and said, hey, we might have to do something a little different to beat that guy. They're also playing a Chiefs defense that I thought did not get enough credit throughout the season. Very underrated group led by Spags on the other side. And they really brought it to Lamar. They played a lot of man coverage, forced him to pass the ball. And they really couldn't beat consistent man coverage against those corners. And so ultimately, we get another Chiefs Super Bowl. I think that a lot of people were rooting for the Ravens if you weren't a Ravens fan, or Lamar, mostly to get something different, to get a cool, different new story. But Patrick Mahomes, fourth Super Bowl in 6 years, shows why he deserves to be in that GOAT conversation already.
All right, Cam. So how in the hell is the National Football League going to catch up with Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid? Like, this is supposed to be their worst skill position group. They're all babies and young. They're going to get better in the offseason as these guys continue to improve and they add pieces. The defense is outstanding. But if this is their worst team, and in my opinion, I don't see how you can pick San Francisco over Kansas City just with Purdy and Mahomes and that matchup. How does the rest of the NFL catch this dude? Or are we just looking at like dominance like we haven't even seen from Tom Brady?
Yeah, you hope and pray, right? This was supposed to be the year. Like, this was supposed to be the year. Like, if you ask the Bills fans or Ravens fans, like, this was the year. This was the quote unquote worst roster Mahomes has been. And it almost becomes like demoralizing. Like, I was in the Bills locker room earlier when they lost to him in the divisional round, and it felt like a funeral, not just because they lost. Like, it was silent because you could feel the players like, man, if we couldn't get him, if we couldn't get him now, when are we ever going to get him? You know, like, you don't say that as a player. You always go back, oh, we'll get him next year. But in the back of your mind, you're like, dang, this was our shot. And so you hope that you build your roster up and you get them where they just don't have their best day the day they play you. That's essentially it. Because the reality is the roster has had to decline, the Chiefs roster, to pay people. And it'll certainly change again. Maybe they lose Chris Jones this offseason and something happens and you have to build the roster or the defense around another player. But does anybody believe that they still won't be back here in the same point in the playoffs, no matter who is on the roster? Like, Chris Jones is a heck of a player. But even if he leaves, even if eventually Travis Kelce retires, as long as they have Patrick Mahomes and they have Andy Reid, I think they'll retool and find a way to be one of the final four teams every year that Mahomes is healthy.
I mean, it's the dominance of Tom Brady in the AFC East and how long he ran that division. You know, now you've got Mahomes in the AFC West, and I think you're going to get a very similar, you know, he's in it for 20 years in that division. Yes. He wins it 18, 19 times. That's just the way it works.
Absolutely. What's crazy, Matt, about Mahomes? Like I don't want to take any credit away from Brady. Brady's got 7 rings. Brady's
Right.
done incredible things. Like he deserves to be the GOAT until Mahomes catches up on some of those accolades. But what Brady didn't even do, Mahomes, every year he's been a starter, he's been in at least the AFC Championship game.
That is
Like that's remarkable to think of. 6 of 6, you have taken your team to the Final Four out of 32 teams. Like that amount of consistency, I think we haven't even seen yet. Like Brady's longevity, like makes him the GOAT because he did it for 20 plus years and even won a ring in the end. But Mahomes at 28 is already doing things that I don't think Brady did in his career. So the only question for Mahomes is can he keep this up deep into his 30s? You know, if you can, then I think you're looking at a situation where this becomes LeBron and MJ. You know, you're deciding based on your flavor. You know, you know, maybe the newer era says Mahomes the great, the older era, although Brady just retired, I don't know if he's the older era, but the older era will say, hey, Brady, like Mahomes may never get 7 rings, but people will always say, oh, well, Brady's the GOAT because he has 7. But if Mahomes gets 4 or 5 and he has this level of consistency, put up the numbers, put up the MVPs, then I think it's him and Brady, 1 or 2, however else you want to rank it.
Make sure you go and follow Cameron on Twitter on the X Machine at Cameron Wolfe. He's a great follow, and we'll be obviously posting this and tagging him on everything as we go throughout the day. All right, so look, the NFL and all the media and everyone tries to like fabricate a rivalry for Mahomes, right? Like Josh Allen and the Bills are a rival. Oh, they can't beat them. And then, hey, maybe Lamar Jackson and the Ravens can be a rival, and they can't beat them. And nobody can seem to consistently beat this man. So how is there a rivalry for the Chiefs in the NFL, or are they their own? Like, are the Chiefs like the Roman Empire? Like the only way it's fall is from the inside out.
Absolutely. I think the Chiefs are the clear number one. Like to me, to have a rivalry, you have to beat somebody in the playoffs. That's why, I talked about the Buffalo Bills because they're the quote unquote team that people want to link them to, and Josh Allen and whatnot. Josh Allen versus Mahomes. Mahomes is 3-0 versus Josh Allen and the Bills in the playoffs. The Bills can't be. The Bills might treat the Chiefs as their rival, but right now they are little brother until they decide to beat big brother. The only team you can have an argument with is the Bengals because Joe Burrow and the Bengals beat the Chiefs in the playoffs that year, and we've got a little bit of the Burrow head kind of arrowhead deal that popped up. So there's a little back and forth there. But even with Joe Burrow and the Bengals, they only made 1 Super Bowl run and they haven't won it yet. So although they beat Mahomes, they haven't had enough overall success that you can say, hey, this is a yin and yang. Now, Burrow was hurt this year, so maybe they come back. But right now, it's the Chiefs and everybody else. This is the new Patriots dynasty because think about it. When the Patriots had their dynasty, who was their rival? There was not really, I guess you could say Brady and Manning. Peyton, you were part of those the Broncos, and you could say the Broncos and Patriots had the rivalry. But that was a very small snippet of the Brady run. Like it was those 3 or 4 years when the Broncos were at their peak that you could say there was a little bit of that yin and yang.
Colts, Patriots.
Yeah, the Colts, Patriots had
it. It was more Tom Payton.
Exactly.
Right when Payton went to Denver, it became Broncos, Patriots. So that was player rivalry.
And so Mahomes has not found his Manning yet. Like people have tried. Maybe it ends up being Burrow. Maybe it ends up being Allen. But right now he's in a league of his own. And to me, like when you think about quarterback rankings, it's not Mahomes and this guy. It's Mahomes in tier 1, gap, and then it's the rest of the guys. Like there's enough of a gap that I don't think you can really mention any of the guys in the same tier as Mahomes.
Insanity watching 15 go out there and perform the way he did in the early game. Now the NFC game, Cam, was nuts. Detroit looking like they're going to make their first Super Bowl. They're up 24-7. I have to go to the main point of emphasis here. Yeah. What in the hell is Dan Campbell doing?
Yeah,
I understand you want to be true to your core and the gritty attitude. I love all that shit. He's an incredible coach. But bro, passing up on 6 points when you lose by 3, that is just gut-wrenching. I mean, if you're a player in that locker room, you got to feel like you gave it to them more than just San Francisco beat you, right?
Yeah, I'm interested in your perspective from a player part of this because it almost felt like when you're in a situation where the Lions are, where they're the underdogs, it almost felt like Dan's like, which way would I rather lose? Would I rather be the losing side of this where, hey, I took the aggressive route and got beat? Or would I rather play a little bit conservative, but get the field goal to tie it up, given that they would have made the field goal, and just leave it to our defense to see if they can stop the other side? Like, to me, I'd say most coaches choose the route he didn't take. Kick the field goal and say, hey, we'll take our chances with our defense. I think he probably took the one that I can sit at home for 7 months and swallow the most, because I guarantee you, just because how we are as a society, if he kicks that field goal and the 49ers go down and march down the field, use a 6-7 minute drive and end it with a field goal, there's going to be some people, maybe a small amount of people, but some people are going to say, hey, why didn't he go more aggressive? Why didn't he go with who he is or who he's been all season? There's always going to be a second guess. But for me, I would rather you be true to who you are and you just go down with your bullet. Like me, I probably kick the field goal, but I'm not Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell's been this guy all year, and his team has known him to be this guy all year. And so because of that, I think you stay true. So I have less of an issue with the end of the game than I think most people do, because that is who he and his team are and really how they got to this point. The one thing I will say there, and it's going to be interesting all season, because the Chargers had this situation last year with Brandon Staley. Brandon Staley was the big analytics guy that went forward on 4th down. Everybody's questioning them, right? All offseason, they got chewed up because they blew the game against the Jaguars in the playoffs. He came back this year, was a lot more ultra conservative, played almost scared coaching. And like, I'm sure 7 months he's telling himself, oh man, I can't, I was too aggressive. I was this and that. And you take your stinger away from a coach, essentially kind of blaming yourself. I hope that whatever Dan does this offseason, he doesn't take his stinger away, because that's what makes him who he is, even if he realizes, hey, I probably should have made a different call at the end of the game.
Now, it turned out to be a hell of a football game. Detroit, they have really, really turned the corner. They are an up-and-coming franchise. Campbell's got them on the right path. Hopefully this one circumstance doesn't derail them too much. But look, San Francisco's been they've been a consistent threat. They've obviously made a Super Bowl. They were up with 6 minutes. They ended up losing it. It seems like Brock Purdy has really figured out the quarterback position in that system, but they're running up and they're the Buffalo Bills running into the Cowboys.
Absolutely.
This is a buzzsaw they're running into. So San Francisco, even with all of their talent, and they might have the best roster in football, but the other side has Patrick Mahomes.
Yes.
The same thing we keep talking about here, brother. Do you see a world where San Francisco can actually go out and Purdy can outduel Mahomes in the Super Bowl? I don't see it.
I don't think Purdy outduels Mahomes. I think their route is different. I think their route is we lean on our run game and our defense, and we out-team them more than we out-quarterback them. I don't think there's any way Purdy outduels Mahomes, but the reason why the 49ers are here is not necessarily because of Purdy being excellent, although he was really good in the second half of this game. I think it's because their compilation of Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, who's been incredible this year, and George Kittle gives them a diverse set of playmakers that you can't double team any of them, and they all beat their one-on-one matchups. They're really good in the trenches, as you know, that defines the game. And you got the O-line they have, you got the D-line you have. It really keeps you in every game. Now they're playing a really good defensive front in the Chiefs. They're playing a really good offensive line that they have. So it's going to be, I'm really interested to see how those trenches battle play out, because I think a lot of people are going to focus on the skills side of things. Is how does Mahomes, with Kelsey, or how do the 49ers with their guys with Brock? But I think those trenches could end up deciding this game. But I think what you just mentioned about the 49ers and to an extent the Lions is also true. Like, everybody assumes you get back, right? Like the 49ers, this is their 4th straight time they've been into the NFC Championship. Their second in the last 4 years, and the second time in the Super Bowl in the last 4 years. They haven't won any of them. And the reality is there's no guarantee they get back. Like there's a weird sense of finality that could come with this game. Like we think Mahomes is going to get back regardless because they have. But when you don't have a Mahomes, it almost feels like every year could be your last shot. And Dan Campbell told his team that yesterday. He said, hey, the reality is this could be our shot. This could have been it, and we could have blown it. I hope not. I'm going to coach like it's not, but it's going to be harder. I think the 49ers have to really rally behind this. Could be our shot. This could be our last shot. We've got to pull out the stops. Boza, you got to play the best game you got. Greenlaw, Warner, all these guys have to have an incredible day versus Mahomes, and they got to figure out how to steal it, even if they don't have the better quarterback.
All right, so look, it's a rematch of a Super Bowl that happened 4 years ago, but it is a rematch. How much do you think the rematch plays into this? Because there are similarities, but the teams are also extremely different. How much do you think the rematch plays into this?
Yeah, I was actually at that Super Bowl. I remember that vividly. It was in Miami, and that game was so intriguing, partially because the world shut down a month later. So it was the last real element of football with COVID that we had for a while. But I think that the biggest thing based on those 4 years ago is less about the players and more about the coaches, because it's a weird situation where most of your core coaching pieces are still the same. A lot of times, there's a lot of coaching turnover in 4 years. You still got Andy Reid versus Kyle Shanahan as far as the two head coaches. The 49ers have changed defensive coordinators, but Steve Spagnuolo is still there for the Chiefs. And so you're still going to have the Kyle Shanahan versus Steve Spagnuolo. You're still going to have the 49ers trying to figure out Reid's offense. And so I do think they'll probably go back to that Super Bowl tape and say, scheme-wise, what does Andy like to do with Mahomes in these big games? What is Kyle? Because even though the quarterback has changed, the way Kyle runs his scheme with Brock and Jimmy is still virtually the same thing. They want to do the same type of elements. And so I think there's going to be a lot of looking into what worked for them scheme-wise against us. What can we try to do when the 49ers try to go a little bit more hurry up? What do we do? What are our base coverages? What are our checks? What do we go through in these type of situations? The Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes have certain type of specialty plays they like on third down, on 2-point conversions. What do we learn from them in the Super Bowl and these sort of things? I think that's going to be the biggest learning assignment. They'll certainly watch that game over and over again, but I think it's more about the coaches figuring out maybe how they scheme against the other defensive coordinator, offensive coordinator, and play caller, more than like players necessarily figuring out who the guys were 4 years ago in that respect.
Right. National reporter for the NFL Network, Mr. Cameron Wolfe, joins us here on 0 to 60 on the Bleep Network. I'm your host, Matt McChesney, as always. We're going to get you out of here on a couple of different questions as we change direction here from the NFL to college football. But before we go, who are you taking in the Super Bowl?
I cannot bet against Mahomes. I think that Patrick Mahomes is inevitable, and I think that he should be the favorite. I think the spread started off with 49ers. I think by 3, it's got, from what I saw, bet down to maybe 1.5.
Kansas City's the underdog?
Yeah.
Dude, now you're just giving them more fire.
Which is crazy, right? Like, Patrick Mahomes is nobody's underdog. He's nobody's underdog.
Champs, too. I mean,
crazy. I'd imagine by the time this thing hits game day, you see this closer to a pick 'em, or even see by a point. But I think the 49ers came in as this overwhelming, talented team. But I think the Chiefs end up getting it. And I actually think that as much as we're talking about Mahomes, I actually think the difference maker in this game is going to be the guy up here I have on my picture board, Isaiah Pacheco. I think he's going to have an amazing day.
Right.
And I think that he's going to be, as much as we talk about Kelsey on one side, all the 49ers on the other side, I think he's the forgotten weapon a lot of times for the Chiefs. And I think he could be the difference maker. We saw how the Lions ran the ball on the 49ers, especially in that first half. Right. I think the Chiefs can really try to slow down the game and then ultimately take control of the game late in the second half by running Pacheco. So that's my pick.
Man, I cannot wait to watch this football game in 2 weeks. But look, moving away from the NFL as we get you out of here, Cam, you're a proud Houston Cougar. You went to the University of Houston. They're in the Big 12. Colorado's moving back to the Big 12. Coach Prime's in Boulder. I know you've had your eyes locked on what's going on here with a lot of roots in the Denver area. Just give me your thoughts on the new Big 12, Coach Prime, everything's going on in Boulder, and just from a bird's eye view from everything you've seen down there in Miami.
I love Coach Prime, what he's doing there, by the way. Like, I know he's a very divisive figure nationally, and I'm sure even in Colorado, there's people who love the way he goes about it, people who don't. My thing is, the way Prime brings attention to his program, the way he brings recruiting to the next level, like, let's keep it real. Colorado was in a rough state before Prime came in as far as attention, as far as record. And yeah, he didn't turn it over record-wise overnight, but he had people coming to Colorado. He had Colorado on national TV selling out that arena, that stadium, in a way that they haven't seen in a long time. And so to me, that is a huge, huge factor. In this new era of college football where recruiting and NILs are everything, he's getting guys who usually go to Alabama and Georgia to come to Colorado. And so I love it. I love it. And I think that once he gets those trenches that we talked about settled, because you could really see it later in the season with the O-line and D-line, really, that was a weakness. They have Shador, they have Travis Hunter and some skill guys, but can you get that offensive line and defensive line to compete in Power 5 level? I think once, and it sounds like recruiting-wise they've done that. Once that gets going, I think you're going to start seeing them being able to compete with some of the top teams consistently in the Big 12. And I don't think it will be a long time before you see them competing for that division, that conference crown, And so I think that's the next step. I think this year goal should be, hey, let's get 6-8 wins. Let's get a bowl game. Let's take a next step forward. And then maybe a year after that, we're competing for the Big 12 title. I think that's very realistic in that roots. And hopefully they play Houston one of these years. Houston's got a little bit to go to. They just made a new hire head coach change, getting rid of Dana Holgorsen, bringing in Willie Fritz. So we're going to see what they do in that respect. But, man, I'm a big fan of Coach Prime. I covered him, a little bit when he was in Jackson State from a pro day perspective. And no matter what people say about how he goes about things, I think he has the right vision in mind for this program. And I think that Colorado fans, you're going to be smiling coming soon here. I think he's going to bring you some wins.
All right, my brother. You have yourself a wonderful day. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Remember, go follow Cam at Cameron Wolfe on Twitter. I'll be tagging him up as we post some of the video from today's interview. Ton of information there. Take it for what you will. Taking Kansas City in the big game because Patrick Mahomes, as he says, is inevitable, and that's the damn truth. Cam Wolfe, thank you so much for coming on the show, brother. Enjoy that balmy 60 degrees down there in Miami, my friend.
Appreciate you, man. Have a great one, my man.
Brother. All right, so 0 to 60 is a wrap here on a beautiful Monday morning. Great interview with Cam. He always does a great job. You'll see him all over the NFL Network with a lot of roots here in the Denver area. If there's any questions here in the comments that you guys want me to answer here before I get off, just shoot them out. But if not, we're probably going to give this a wrap and be back tomorrow as we start previewing the Super Bowl and talking about a ton of other shit that's going on in the sports world. Continuing to elaborate on these games, the decisions made, things of that nature. So appreciate it. Thank you, DC, on the very good interview. I try. I'm no Dan Rather, but at the same time, it's all good. I'm also I'm prettier than this man. So yeah, man, 0 to 60 rolls. We really appreciate everybody. Make sure you go like and subscribe. Follow everybody on social media. I think the TikTok page this morning hit to 226,000 people. It's over already. Yeah, we've been on for 40 minutes, Hector. Sorry, bro. Didn't mean to go too short here, but that's what she said. Hey-oh. Oh, fuck. Yeah, but look, we really appreciate everybody. Have yourself a wonderful Monday, and we will be back tomorrow. How would you stop the San Francisco up front as an O-line coach? How would I stop San Francisco? Look, I will answer this question tomorrow. How will I stop San Francisco? Maybe do a video on it and watch some of the All-22 from the gym. But it's going to be tough, man. You're going to have to identify where 97 is all the time. And then, they're pretty complex with their blitz scheme and fast. So, it is what it is. All right, folks. Have yourself a good day.